Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Forte Podcast. I am your co-host, Dominic Epps.
And I'm your co-host, Randall Monfiston.
And we are here to dive into your lane of greatness to discover what comes easy for you that may not be easy for others.
Everyone's a genius, from the 9-to-5 employee to the Fortune 500 billionaire. We're here to highlight those attributes through dialogue and interviews with amazing guests.
Absolutely. So I got one question for you. What's your forte?
What's your forte?
Yes, sir. What's up, brother? What's your name? Before we even get to what's your forte,
Oh, man, here we go.
Here's the question that I want to ask everybody today. And here's why I'm asking this question, brother. Because I feel like we both have two identities, right? We were raised with nicknames, and we give each other nicknames, right?
Mm-hmm.
You knew me as Prime, right? I knew you as Jers Rep, right? This was back in our Double I days.
Yeah.
But growing up, man, believe it or not, you probably know this, but believe it or not, just about everybody I know, I would say 90% of the people growing up know me as Dominique. And it's not my name. Now, some, of course, would say Neek, some would say Dom, some would say D, right? But for the most part, it's hey, Dominique. My name is spelled Domenick. It's actually pronounced Dominic.
Yeah.
Now, I say, most white people say it correctly. Most white people say Dominic, right? Dominic. But, brother, our people, Neek, what's up, Neek? It ain't Neek. But I answer to both. So, now the ball is in your court. I don't want to mess it up. I don't want to mess it up.
Oh, man. All right.
Yeah.
How this conversation started, audience, listeners, viewers, and in pre-production mode of this particular episode, our upcoming guest was asking how to say my last name.
Yep.
And Dominique.
Dominic.
Yeah, I'm being funny. I know. Have I ever called you Dominique? I never called you that before. It's always been Dominic.
You always say Prime. Then you went to Dom. Yeah.
But anyway, my last name, right? So I'm a Haitian. I have a Haitian background. So my last name, by the purest way of saying it, the right way to say it in Creole, French way of saying it is Monfiston. But Americanized way of saying it is called Monfiston. So I answered Monfiston. Even when I was in the military, people would say Monfiston, and I would rod you up and I'll answer them. But Monfiston is
Monfiston. I never knew that, bro. So
yeah.
All right, help me out. Go ahead.
Mo fi stone.
Monfiston. Wow.
No, you still is Monfiston. Like Mo, and then fi and then stone. Monfiston.
Oh, so Monfiston.
Yeah.
Monfiston. I'm still messing it up, huh? Monfiston.
You're close. You're good. We don't got to take up the whole podcast to do that. We talk about that offline.
Yeah.
Part of
But why do we do this though? Why do we answer to incorrect names?
Yeah, you know what? Like it was one of my COs asking me probably like 10 years ago, my commanding officers while I was in the military. And he said, I never knew your name was pronounced like that. Like, am I wrong for pronouncing it the Monfiston? I said, no, that's what I've been answered to for so long now, right? I hear Monfiston way more than I hear Monfiston. It's more so when people have some type of understanding of French or Creole, right, that they're able to put it together. But 9 times out of 10, Monfiston is what it is.
Wow. So
yeah. Maybe I need to start going Birdman and have people
pronounce it right.
My name, huh?
Does Landon know the correct way to pronounce this?
He knows that the American way is not the right way.
Okay.
I don't think he's got it down quite right to make it flow.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So my mother-in-law, man, my mom, I don't even call my mother-in-law, but my mom, she makes sure if she's in my presence and someone says my name incorrectly, she's going to correct them. She's been doing it for years.
Shout out to my in-law.
Okay. Bro, she's been doing it for years. If somebody be like Dominique, she'd be like, it's Dominic. She does that, man, religiously. So yeah, shouts out to Mama Lisa, man. She's gonna make sure you say my name right. But just think about it, in our community, we have been prone to just answering to the wrong name. But we must
Yeah,
realize, man, that our name is our brand, right?
yeah, yeah.
Name is a
True,
brand.
true.
And there are some brand names that we mispronounce, right? That we
Yeah.
mispronounce. So needless to say, I'm not even sure if today's guest, if we're saying his name correctly. I'm gonna have you say it, but when he comes on, if it's pronounced wrong, let's go ahead and get it right because we do not want our viewers calling it by the wrong name. So, brother, come on, tell us who do we have coming on today's show? Because we have another amazing show, and I'm so excited. So, go ahead and introduce who we have coming on today's show.
All right. So today we have another amazing guest. We keep on doing it bigger and bigger. I'm glad to have him. I came across his brother at a meetup training that he was on. So he does coaching for apartment investing. He has his own syndicates that he's created for apartments. And he has a wealth of information. And I thought as I was in this training, like this guy got to be on a podcast to be able to have our viewers hear or see what he's talking about. So I bring to the stage off the mic, Brandon Jenkins from Birch Prosper. Make sure I'm saying that right, Birch Prosper, to be able to share what's your forte.
Welcome, Brandon. Welcome. First of all, let's get it out the way. What's the correct way to pronounce your name, sir?
Absolutely, man. First of all, thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure. So my name is Brandon Jenkins, but I will say, oddly enough, my middle name, the Americanized way is Eugene, but it is pronounced Eugene, right? So Brandon Eugene Jenkins is my name.
But Eugene, where's that? Where's that from? Like, what was that?
It has like a French background, kind of,
Okay.
which is so in terms of my personal my background and my family's background, we're not of French origin or anything like that. But my father's middle name is LaFringe, so it's kind of strange. I'm not sure what the origin of that is, but that's how you pronounce my name, though. So Brandon Jenkins.
Got it. So that's how you was able to pick up on my last name, having that twist, right? It's not.
Yeah. Mon fiston.
There we go.
You see,
and he had the hand movement. You know what I'm saying?
Did you see it? Did you see it? I was trying to make sure it got in the camera. It's a tight. We got thirds here, so I got to bring it in real tight.
Yeah. Got you. Yo. But, yeah. But people don't want to hear us talking about our names. They want to hear about the content that you got to deliver, brother. So tell them what's your forte, bro.
Absolutely, man. So I am a multifamily syndicator. Okay, it's basically a term that's used to describe someone who pools capital or raises capital to acquire large assets. Okay, now I the types of assets that I purchase are multifamily apartment buildings, right? So I'm typically looking at buildings, complexes that are 100 units or more. The largest that I've ever been a part of is right at 300 units. And so that's kind of at the core of what I do. But I'm also, as you mentioned, Randall, I'm also a coach. And so I coach people on how to raise capital, how to attract capital, which we can talk about, but so that they can do it themselves. And those are kind of the real two core projects or main focuses that I do on a regular basis.
Got you. So Birch Prosper, is that the umbrella for your coaching and for the syndicates that you bring together, or is the coaching something separate of that?
The coaching is something separate now. It actually they were kind of one and the same, but I made the decision to split it off. So the coaching arm is the Capital Mastery Pro, but Birch Prosper is where all of my investments. It's kind of the parent for that. And it's the name Birch Prosper for me. It's I like the fact that if you think of a birch tree, then underground it's the same root system, but when it breaks through the surface, then it's very common for birch trees to have multi-stem profile. So they have different branches, different trunks that come up from one root system, but they all contribute to the same foliage. And so I kind of combine that with prosperity, right? So Birch Prosper. So.
Yeah,
a little bit of meaning to it. Yeah,
that's dope.
And that's the best. Those are the best title, like the best names for your business is ones that you hold dear to your heart, that has some type of meaning, not just Brandon Syndicate, right? Like something that has a
Yeah.
meaning like that, right? Because you always could refer back to that. Like, am I falling in line, the mission of my company, with what I created to begin with? So that's, yeah, man, that's dope.
Yeah, it's
I
dope.
would
That's
never even
dope.
picked up on that. I didn't even know
Yeah.
birch was. I never even thought about a tree. I wouldn't even thought about that, to be honest.
I was about to ask him who name did it come from, right? I wasn't even. I'm thinking he was going to say like a grandfather or, but no,
Yeah.
you really explained that pretty well, man. And yeah, brother, you preaching
Appreciate
already,
it.
so that was dope. So let's get into your background. Tell us a little bit about where you're from, your upbringing, and how was life for you growing up.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm born and raised in the DC area, and I'm the youngest of three brothers, but we had a loving home, man. We always, two parents, a two-parent household. Both of my parents are from the country. One is from the country up north in Pennsylvania, and my mom is from North Carolina. But kind of bring those two together, we really had sort of like a country feel to how we were raised. So very strict, disciplined, and more importantly, look, we were in DC at a time when DC was pretty rough, but my parents, they always made sure to expose us to things that were going to help us improve and do better and kind of rise above some of the noise. And so, that structure and discipline has always kind of carried through all three of our lives. Me and my brothers, and also a very religious background. My parents are both ministers, and so I'm a man of faith. And so for me, it's very important to kind of how I run my life. But yeah, it's just had an influence on every aspect of who I am and what I do.
Yeah,
But that's it, just a loving household, man. So yeah.
that's awesome. Listen, I could tell there was some preaching the way you exegeted that name. You broke that name down. I said, yeah, my brother know that word, man. That's good.
Mhm.
So both parents in the household, you grew up in DC. DC was rough, right?
Mhm.
Um, did you have a entrepreneur spirit as a child, or what made you get into this realm that you're now in?
It's funny. My mother, she always used to call me Mr. Hardworking Man, and when I was younger, I didn't quite understand why. But as I think back on it, like there were a lot of times, even during like junior high um, and even when I was in elementary school, when I would always ask to work, I was always asking if I could have a job. And so I know at one point I worked as a janitor. When I wasn't even in high school. I was working as a janitor at a hair salon one time. Then I worked at a pet store. I was always doing something to where it's like, look, I want to find out how to make some money on my own. And so and well, in addition to that, my father started a practice. So he's an attorney by trade, and he started a private practice, and my mother actually worked there with him for a little while. And so I do have an entrepreneurial background in that sense. They ended up closing the practice and moving on from it, but my foundation is definitely kind of rooted in that. Going out and trying to chart a course, trying to figure your way out and kind of rough it out a little bit, and that played pretty heavily on my path for sure.
Got you. So today you're doing apartment invested multifamily units.
Mhm.
Did you start off single family, or you just jumped straight into the big leagues?
I did. So I started off as single family. So by degree, I'm a chemical engineer, but by trade, I'm a petroleum engineer. All right. And so the oil and gas business is really good when it's good, but when it's bad, it gets real bad, right? They start reducing personnel as soon as the price dips. So around that time, that was when I found out, okay, listen, I need to do something to offset some of this volatility. And I always was interested in wealth and how can I build wealth to insulate myself from these things. And I started in real estate because one of my college friends, he actually flipped homes at the time. But I wanted something a little more stable, even though that's still good money. Wanted something a little more stable, so I started to look for rentals. And I got to about 12 units on the single family side, and then wanted to scale up, and it kind of went from there. So I started on a single family, went to multifamily, but jumped straight into syndication from there.
Got it, man. So 12 doors you had, and then so help us understand. You talked about raising capital, right? So how did you jump into the syndicate? Did you jump in partnering with somebody else, kind of shadowing them, or did you kind of do your own due diligence and say, hey, this is something that I might be interested in doing on my own, and then kind of use some of the equity in those 12 doors to kind of help
Mm.
fund the first deal that you did for the multifamily?
It's kind of a blend of those things. So I did sell my single family portfolio and use those to fund deals on the multifamily side. But I also partner with someone. So I always tell people, I mean, look, the best way to get in, if you're interested in the the apartment investing space, typically what you're going to be talking about large deals, 10 million plus dollar deals, 100 units and north of that. The best way to get into it is to be a passive investor first. It's what you call a
Mm-hmm.
limited partner. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was a limited partner in like way more deals than I think most people should be. I was a limited partner in 11 deals. Okay. I typically tell people that if you want to kind of get a feel for it, and if you know for sure that you want to be on the active side, or if you want to be a general partner, then maybe get into a couple of deals as an LP, because you're earning while you learn, right? So it's this whole, I mean, yes, you're learning the ropes, but you're getting paid to learn the ropes, right? You're getting a quarterly distribution. And if you pick the right team and the right deal, then you get the lump sum when you exit. And so to me, it's just the best. It's the best way to go. You can sit on the sidelines all you want and read books all you want and do all that, but if you don't have any skin in the game, it really is difficult. First of all, to know whether it's something you want to do, but it's also kind of difficult to really learn enough to say, okay, I'm ready to jump into it myself.
That's good. That's good.
Mm.
So when did you get your first property, and what
Mm.
was it that made you get your first single family house to say, okay, I'm going to start with this one? Like, what click, or who did you talk to, or who mentored you, who got you interested or curious about investing in real estate?
Yeah, so it was in 2015 was when I got my first single family property, and I went to Howard University here in DC, and like I said, one of my good buddies, he was also a chemical engineer, but he had a very sharp business mind, and it's funny. I think he graduated with a master's in chemical engineering, but as soon as he graduated, he went and kind of did something else because he was just that entrepreneur. Um, but he had a number of things going on. He owned his own business, and he also flipped properties. And I lived in Houston at the time, so he was flipping properties outside of Houston. And uh, back in 2014 or so, it was in oil and gas, and the price went from, if you remember, the price went from like $126 a barrel um, down to like 18 or something crazy. And so they were laying everybody off. Thankfully I managed to hold on to my job, but I was like, okay, I need to do something about it. So I told him, hey, look, his name was Anthony. I said, Anthony, let me go check out what you got going on out here. So I drove out to the market where he bought properties. And as we're driving around, he's like, yep, I own that. I own that. I own that. I'm working on this. And that was it. I said, okay. Cause I've been reading books and listening I've been doing all this, the research and everything. I was already investing in the market a little bit. And so I knew I wanted to do something, but I'm like, where do I want to apply all this? And once I
Mm.
saw that, it made it so real for me, right? Because it's a tangible asset. And that's when I just fell in love with it and just went from there.
Wow.
Got you.
Good.
Got you. Yeah. That's yeah. It's the proof of concept. One, kudos to him for driving you around, right? To show you like, hey, like it's a concept that can actually be obtained, and this is the
Mhm.
fruits of my labor, and this is how I've done it, right? And then another thing is that you actually took heed to that and then started moving forward to then scale
Mhm.
your own portfolio. So that's great. Most people, even if they see it in front of them, they don't take action because they still have that fear factor. So I
Yeah.
often say a lot of times, especially being an entrepreneur, is one being resourceful, but the other piece is just stepping into the fear, right? Because on the
Mhm.
other side of the fear is where the golden pot, if you will, is. You can't get there
Yeah.
without the hurdles, without doing the things that make you scared.
Absolutely.
Um,
That's right.
so let's talk about like, cause I'm gonna be honest, I didn't know nothing about syndications prior to 2024. And it wasn't until I was in your training and you were sharing, right? Like most people think that these big skyscrapers, these big apartment buildings are owned by only multimillionaires, right? And you need to have
Mhm.
millions of dollars in the bank to be able to get into them. And just kind of like break it down for the viewers of how, one, that's a farce, right? And then two, what
Mhm.
is it not? I'm not saying all deals. I know some deals probably require a minimum that's higher. But then what is your lowest minimum that you've seen? And then how common it is for you to be able to jump in to a deal at that price point?
Yeah, man. Look, what you just described there for me is what one of the things that excited me about it was because being from DC, you see these buildings, you're like, okay, well, there's no way that I could ever have a part of that in any way. The lowest that I've seen personally, I think, is around 10,000 actually for a syndication, which was a hotel syndication deal. It wasn't one of the ones that I was in, but there are syndication deals that can be even lower than that. I haven't personally seen them, but I know of them. Um, and it depends on what the filing type is. I don't want to get I guess too in the weeds, but there are
Hmm.
filing types that allow the active investor, the general partner, to kind of go almost as low as you want. Now, I think there are some reasons not to do so, but that's about it. I mean, I would say about 10,000. And I'm gonna tell you the reason why I typically don't advise, like if I'm speaking to someone who wants to start their own syndication, I typically will tell them, hey, look, you don't want to go too low, because if you do, number one, it's a bit of an administrative kind of headache, because you still have to issue K1s and a lot of paperwork that comes with each investor. So it takes a lot of time. um but yeah, but again, the really good thing about the syndication space is, you as an investor, you don't have to be a millionaire in order to be able to take part in these. um it's very, very often for a fairly small team to be the person who, or to be the group that controls a lot of these assets that you're driving down the highway and you see a nice apartment building, you see a retail center, you see a big self-storage center. A lot of times these are small teams that own these things, and
Mhm.
you wouldn't think so until you get into this space and you start to see, my goodness, like these guys are talking about $100 million building, and there's only five of them, and they're going to go and raise capital, and that's it. It's going to be these are the guys that are going to own it. I just had a conversation with a friend of mine who's working with a group that does self storage development, and so they do brand new, large self storage facilities, and then they turn it over to self storage property management companies like CubeSmart, right? Like, so big names that we recognize. And again, they're not a large team. Um, the key, though, see, this is the big piece in all this. The key is to learn to raise capital. That is the key in all of it. Okay. And that's also the hurdle for a lot of people, right? To getting into this. That fear factor that you mentioned is it typically comes from maybe, on one hand, the limited knowledge about something, but the other hand is, yeah, it is a gargantuan task. Because if you're saying, hey, listen, this thing's $10 million, and you're going to need to raise about 2.5 million, and if you haven't raised capital before, or if you don't have a system for raising capital, that's pretty intimidating. Or even more than that, 10 million. You got to raise 10 million, 20 million. I mean, so it's not an easy task, but if you have the right partners, first of all, and if you have the right system in place, then it becomes much more doable, much more manageable, and easier than you might think. But again, to your original point, yes, it is absolutely something that you can take part in. You don't have to be a mega millionaire in order to do so. You do need to know kind of who has these kinds of deals and that sort of thing. It's still the private entities market, so it's not public. But outside of that, yeah, anyone can take part in it.
So I have a few
Okay.
questions for you, right? This may seem like several questions in one. Okay.
Mhm.
So if you could explain to our viewers the difference. So we're talking about syndication, but then you have REITs, real estate investment trust, and then you
Mhm.
have investment clubs or investment groups, right? Some that require you to be an accredited investor, and then some that requires you can be non-accredited, right? Can you explain to our viewers what are the difference between those?
Yeah, yeah. The first place I'll start is being accredited versus being non-accredited. And if you are an accredited investor, there are a number of ways to be qualified as accredited. The most common is if you are single and you earn over $200,000 a year, or if you're a couple and you earn over $300,000 a year combined. And then the third is if you have greater than $1 million in net worth. There are other, criteria as well, but those are the common three. And you're considered accredited, and otherwise you fall into the non-accredited bucket. Now, the reason that's important is because if I have a deal, so if I go out and find an apartment complex and I get it under contract, and then I kind of get the ball rolling, I start raising some capital. Depending on how I file this with the SEC, I may or may not be able to take on a non-accredited investor. So there are some deals where people will say exclusively, this is for accredited investors only. And there are reasons for that. One of which is because you may want to solicit the deal in certain spaces. And if I file it in such a way that I can solicit the deal, then it needs to be accredited only. In terms of the difference between, say, a syndication and a REIT or REIT, I view REITs are almost like a mutual fund, right? You are investing in a basket of assets, more or less. You typically don't know who the fund manager is. You can find out, but you typically don't know who the fund manager is. You typically have not had a conversation with anyone who's kind of on that team. It's publicly traded. Usually there are private REITs, but most of them the more common ones are publicly traded. And so there are certainly some differences mechanistically, because when you typically think of a syndication, it usually is for a single asset. Not all the time, because you can have a fund or something like that. But typically, when we're talking about multifamily syndication deals, we're usually saying one asset. I've formed a syndication to buy this one property. Okay, so it's not a basket of properties. And then the last one, you mentioned a club. Would you call it a money club?
Investment
Club.
Yep.
So those take a lot of different forms, though. There are some investment clubs where it's like, hey, where they almost mimic a fund. They may or may not be a fund, but they can mimic a fund to say, hey, listen, in order to be a part of this club, you have to have $50,000 at the ready, or you have to have $100,000, $200,000 at the ready, because here's the thesis, and here's what we intend to, if we have an asset or an opportunity, these are the types of opportunities that we intend to pursue. And as such, anyone who's going to be a member of this club, we formed a club so that we can take down some properties. Okay, so some clubs are formed in that way because it's like, hey, listen, we want to have kind of a meaningful direction, and we want to grow together, and so that's how they typically structure them. Doesn't mean it's like a fund. Some funds, they don't call themselves clubs. It could just be a fund that says, hey, it's a blind pool fund. We're taking a minimum of $100,000,
Yep.
and then we'll find an asset that fits this profile. But that's kind of how, I know it's a little bit long winded, but that's how we kind of
it's awesome. So
the three.
I was watching a video from Grant Cardone, and in this specific video, he referenced having 11,000 properties, right? And it almost caused me to do some research. And he talked about raising capital. He talked about how Tiffany Haddish, came to his property, and he's getting different people involved now that want to get into the real estate space, right? And he raised $1 billion, distributed over $248 million, and he's targeting to give out 15% returns. I'm gonna say it again. He raised over $1 billion. He has distributed $248 million, and with 15% returns. So, of course, the average listener, when you hear someone say they have 11,000 properties, you're like, how in the world did he get 11,000 properties? Like, what is he doing, right? I haven't even heard Robert Kiyosaki say he had 11,000 properties, right? But then when you talk about syndication and raising capital, you have to be a great visionary. You have to be a great speaker to be able to cast that vision out there for because yes, everybody want to hear the numbers and what the returns are, but before they give you one dime, they have to believe in who you are and your ability to be that fund manager, to be the one that's going to spearhead this, right? And they have to trust in you to say, okay, I trust you, I believe you. Here's the investment. I'm looking forward to the return, however long it may be, right?
Yeah.
Can you share with us your first time raising that million or $10 million deal, and how did it go? How long did it take you to raise the capital? That's what I want to know. Like how did that take place?
Yeah. So right now, the vast majority of my investors, they are what you call kind of retail investors. So they're not family offices, they're not institutions or anything like that. And so what there are pros and cons to it. For me, I say the con is that you typically will then have more checks. So you sometimes you hear people when they're talking about a deal, they'll say, look, I only want to have a couple of check writers. What they're basically saying is, I don't care regardless of how much the property is worth. If it's a $50 million property and I got to raise capital for it, I'm gonna raise 20 million or something like that. If I have relationships with a couple of maybe private equity firms or family offices, they cut a few checks for 5 million, 10 million, and that's it. So that's one of the downsides, I think, to having more investors. But the pro is just what you mentioned. You get to retail investors, just like the three of us. We typically care more about the person, the story. We want to be sort of, in a way, invited into it, right? Because we want to see a little bit of ourselves in what they're doing, or we at least want to see that, hey, this person can take me and my family, right? They can kind of move the needle in my situation, and they've taken the time to have a conversation with me. And so, with the deal that I'll tell you, the deal we closed last year is a property in Northwest Arkansas. Beautiful, beautiful property, Class A deal, 2020 build. I mean, it's just beautiful. And so it took us to raise the capital. It took us about 4 months to raise the capital for it. But this is like a $70+ million asset. And so, again, but a lot of it was, now we're a partnership. So there are several of us on the team, but a lot of it is having those conversations either one-on-one or with a small group. We typically will start off where we'll do kind of a webinar. We'll talk about the deal, talk about the market, talk about the opportunity. But it's the one-on-one conversations that really start to, be more meaningful. And what that means then is, if you are looking to get into this space, you have to be pretty clearly focused on who it is that you want to serve. So for me, my background is oil and gas, and I'm in a few other communities as well. So I typically will say, okay, I know that these are high income earners. I know they're busy professionals, and I already speak the language. So I'm going to be of service to that group. So it helps, right? It makes things easier when you step back and think about, okay, I have to raise all this capital. How can I do it? Well, you have to make sure you're speaking to the right people. But you still, again, like you mentioned, you have to have a compelling story. You have to invite people into the story. And then you have to serve more as kind of someone who can help them along the way, as opposed to, I'm not going to show up and get on stage and make it about me. So if I have a conversation with someone or a group of people and it's about a specific opportunity, I want them to see themselves in the opportunity. I want them to see how it can help them achieve their goals. And so that's kind of what I typically coach people to do, is really focus on those things and build. You mentioned how your name is your brand earlier, so be consistent and build your brand around that, around service, around helping people achieve their goals and solve some of their problems. And that's kind of the best way to do it.
So do you bring, or do you just keep a pool of potential investors at all times as you shop around for deals? And be like, okay, I have soft commits for about $3 million from various people. So I know that allows me to have a down payment to a $10 million property, or whatever the case may be. Is that how you approach it? Like, you're constantly kind of fostering these relationships with these different people throughout the year or however long, and then you just know in the back of your mind as you see deals come across your desk that I potentially could buy this deal because I know I have X amount of people behind me that could support funding it.
That's a good question.
That's correct. So it's nurturing those relationships, but also always keeping an eye on, okay, how much do I have kind of in soft commits? But and the thing, and it's a bit of a balance, right? So if we have a deal that we just closed, so like the deal I just mentioned, immediately after that, I wouldn't go and say, okay, let me go get another one because I need to make sure that people have time to recoup a little bit. But I'm always having new conversations as well to see who else I can potentially help. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, well, we just raised a bunch of capital for this deal, so we'll kick it out 4 months instead of trying to go get something immediately after. But yes, it's nurturing those relationships, making sure that you are always kind of keeping fresh on your soft commits. And that's one of the challenges, right? Is because it really is something that you have to do on a continuous basis, unless you have like a fund or something set up. And so, which I don't at the moment. So yeah, it's always that nurturing those relationships, keeping an eye on how much do we just deploy, and how does that impact the total soft commit kind of stock that I might have in place.
So this is what I'm getting so much out of this, right? But also in knowing when we're talking about the SEC, right? And for those of you watching, you may be like, hey, I want to go ahead and start my own. And so here's what I want to say to you. Okay. If you're trying to go raise capital, if you're trying to raise capital through retailers, non-accredited investors, you cannot publicly solicit. You cannot go on social media and say, hey, we're going to start this and I want to get, as XYZ number of people to come in so we can pool our funds together. That's not how I operate. And you will be, breaking some rules and regulations in regards to the SEC. So it's important for you to understand how to properly set up your syndication or your investment group or whatever it is that you are trying to do, because here's what I've learned is that when you're dealing with people that are non-accredited, as the SEC know, they cannot stomach a loss, right? And so if you have an accredited investor and say they invested $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 and the market tanked for whatever reason and they lost those funds, right? It's not going to hit them the same as it would someone that invested $1,000 or $2,000 of their tax refund money or their 401k, right? Funds that they have saved up and they came and, they have a relationship with you, or they just heard by name because someone saw you post something and they say, hey, I want to get involved. And they get involved. And what they say is, if it tanks, oh, it's a scam. The reality is business, right? But it may not have been communicated in such a way to where you understand there are pros and cons to all forms of investing. Brandon, you talked about earlier about oil market, right? I remember when it dropped. I'm so disappointed I didn't catch it on the up, right? I mean, it dropped, and I was watching my account just go boom, 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 and I was so in fear that I wasn't thinking opportunity. I wasn't thinking, oh, this is a time to rebuy. It's not going to stay like this forever, right? It's going to go back up. But when you are non-accredited, that's how you're thinking, right? You are thinking that, oh, I lost my money, and it was this. No, crypto. We've seen it in crypto. We've seen it in the real estate bubble. We've seen it in so many different ways, right? So my next question, and you talked a lot, even in regards to your career background and how that has in some way helped you to pool your resources because you were able to speak the language, right? What do you say to someone who does not have those individuals within their reach, right? And maybe they don't have a college degree, or maybe they're not an engineer. Maybe it was a janitor. Maybe they was doing what you were doing in the salon, and maybe there was a janitor, but they've been reading books. They attended your seminar. They've attended a Rich Dad Poor Dad seminar, and the list goes on, and they aspire to be in your shoes. what would you say to them as just some simple steps apart from attending one of your seminars, by the way?
Yeah, that's right. That's a key step right there. No, look, man. The first thing I'm gonna tell you is if it is someone like, and I know this is a hypothetical, but if it's someone who doesn't have kind of that formal education, then you have a leg up, okay? Because you have less to unlearn. In my experience, it's actually been the people who have that formal education who typically are the last to take a risk. Like even a calculated risk. We're not when we say risk, we're not talking about just going out and doing something random. We're talking about a calculated risk, looking for asymmetric returns that we've evaluated and determined the merits of. So you have a bit of a leg up because you have less to unlearn. But what I would say is what you have to focus on is getting around people who have done it. You have to. If I could just give a general advice to people, I would say spend less time seeking advice from people who have not done the thing that you are looking to do. If it is something that you want to do,
hold on, Brandon. Hold on.
Listen.
Hold on. I normally try not to interrupt our guests. You got to repeat that one, brother. Let me solo you one more time because you got to repeat that one. That one right there was so key, and our editors need to make sure that's the first clip that we push out there. Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Look, I'm going to say it again. This is if you have something that you are looking to do, to achieve, and to accomplish, you need to stop spending time around people who have not done it. You have to stop looking for advice from people who have never been there, never done it before. Seek the advice of people who have not only done it before, but who have had success in it. Okay, because the only thing that people they've not been there, we talked about fear a moment ago. The only thing that they're going to do is to push their own fear onto you. It almost doesn't matter how much research you've done. Doesn't matter how much, how sure you are of the opportunity. But as soon as you go and you start asking people who haven't done it before and they're skeptical about everything, then they're going to push their fear onto you. And so the advice that I would give then, kind of the scenario that we're talking about, is to seek out people who have done it before. Okay. And you'll be surprised how many years you can compress, okay, and shave off on your own journey just by being around people who have been there, done that. Because if you just think about it, if you go around your personal circle today and you say, hey, I'm thinking about starting a $20 million fund, you'll get people who might laugh you out the room. But if you say that in the right circle, then the first thing they're going to say is, okay, well, I can put you in touch with a good, SEC attorney. I can put you in touch with somebody who's raised $100 million. They can give you some pointers on how to get that $20 million fund started. So you have to plug into the right ecosystem, to the right community who can help you get to where you want to go. So that's what I would say.
Wow. Yo, let me add something to that, right? Just to help people frame that, because a lot of times people say, well, how do I get around somebody like that? Show up to networking events, show up to coach calls, right? Show up to, like, there's plenty of platforms. Like Brandon says that he holds trainings. Like, I've attended his trainings. He has a coaching platform where he's able to teach you things like that. The internet is at your fingertips. I'm sure wherever you live at, you don't have to live in the DC area. You can live in Texas. You can live in California, for wherever have you. There's somebody somewhere that is advertising the services that they provide, such as what Brandon's doing with his coach calls or his coach training or his meetups, to be able to share the opportunities that he's suggesting right now, to allow people to be in his space. So I'm pretty sure Brandon's not the only one doing it. And I would venture to say that I'm 100% sure Brandon's not the only one doing it, right? He mentioned that he partnered with somebody when he first started, right? And it wasn't he just stumbled across somebody in the middle of the street, right? I'm pretty sure he did it, whatever due diligence he needed to do to find where these people are at. So don't just think that, oh, like, it's easy to say that this person needs to go partner up with this person, right? Like, or you with somebody who has no experience in apartment investing to partner with somebody who does have experience in apartment investing. It is that easy. There are plenty of rooms, plenty of spaces where people are just hanging around, sharing information, and you just got to be in those rooms. Sit on the couch, watching TV, watching reality TV is not going to get you in those spaces.
That's right.
You got to be willing to pay to get in those rooms. Let's clarify, right? Because there are people that would love to get in those rooms for free.
Yep.
But you have to
that's
be
actually,
willing to make
yeah.
the investment. You want to learn how to raise 30 million, but don't want to spend $3,000. This is not the business for you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I would agree. I appreciate that perspective, and you're right. I mean, listen, I think about it. I typically say, look, you're going to pay one way or the other. Now, I would say the first thing I would say is in terms of getting in initially, getting around it. One of the best resources is meetup.com. Like you mentioned, Randall, no matter where you are, you can go to meetup.com and see if there's a group in your area, and there probably is, that's doing something like that, an investing group of some kind. That at least gets you that initial exposure. But I mean, you're right. Look, a lot in my experience, some of the best training, the best coaching, mentorship, they are in paid programs, and there are reasons for that. I've been in free ones, I've been in paid ones, and I can tell you across the board that once you have people who have a commitment and who have skin in the game, you see much better results. But what's more important is the people who have been there, done that, who have raised $1 billion in capital. Their time is going to be worth something. Their knowledge is going to be worth something. Their team is going to be worth something. And you're right. Look, if you're sitting, upset about $3,000, and this isn't to bash you, I'm just saying, if you are thinking, I sure would love to be able to raise $10 million in capital one day, or 5 million, 1 million. But if the thought of spending some capital to get that knowledge bothers you, you just have to reevaluate some things. Okay. Because this business, you really can become truly financially free. We're talking time freedom, financial freedom, location freedom. Just imagine being on the other side, and you can go where you want, when you want, with whom you want. Okay, you can do that. But everything that's worth doing requires a little bit of sacrifice. Okay, and you got to till the soil a little bit. So that's just how it goes.
Man. I want to take out. I got another one in my head. Let me just go. I'm about to hit them with it, yo.
Come on.
Anything you do that's worth succeeding, you always got to take a step down to go up. Mm-hmm. Even if you're going to go win the lottery, you got to take a deficit of $1, $2, $3, $4, $5, however much you spend it on a lottery. So your bank account takes a deduction before you shoot up. So before you shoot up to $20, $30 million, your bank account needs to take a deficit, whether it's gas to go to these meetup.com locations, whether it's to go put on a suit or buy a suit if you don't have a suit, to be able to be presentable at these certain circles, right? Or to get a laptop, or to get a printer. Like, it's always going to be deduction before you see a production. Man, listen.
Come on,
brother.
man.
I think you answer your own question, Mofiston.
Why you
the question that you called me about? I think you answered your own question. I think you just answered it, Mofiston.
Yeah.
I think you just answered it.
I already pulled the trigger. I pulled the trigger.
Okay. We'll talk about that on another episode. But one of the ways, for those of you watching, one of the ways for you to get in the room is to make sure you join us in November. You missed out on the DC Forte experience, but we'll come into Atlanta in November. So you just need to make sure that you are in the room so you can connect with individuals like Brandon and Mr. Mofiston and everyone else that's going to be in the room. Because
the Haitian community going to eat you up alive, man, because you keep on messing that name up.
All right. You're going to be in there with Road to Capital. Myself and Randall, right? And we're going to be able to connect you with some great people that's doing some amazing things. But I want you to know that if you have a desire to be great, yes, the greatest among you is a servant. Just remember that the greatest among you is a servant. You do not get to be the teacher first. The greatest among you is a servant. And be willing to remain a student. I can tell you right now, I got some questions for Brandon. I'm taking this brother out to lunch somewhere very soon because we're gonna further this conversation. But there are some people that are watching, and maybe to you, 20 million seems like a huge vision. But listen, we're gonna ask Brandon right now to let us know, where does he see himself? So Brandon, where do you see yourself 5-10 years from now? So when we bring you back on, right, what do you see yourself doing 5-10 years from now in the biggest capacity? What is it? Talk to us.
All right. So for me, it's 10,000 units. I'm on the road to 10,000 units, man. And there are two things for me. One is I want to, and I'm gonna give you my two goals. One is kind of with respect to the syndication space, and the other is the coaching space. 10,000 units in the investing space, and 5,000 clients, successful clients in the coaching space. So as far as investing goes, I want to have a fund that has enough capital in there to close more than a deal a quarter. And for me, I kind of want to focus at middle market. So I don't want to go high enough to where I'm kind of in the institution kind of range. So I want to stay under that $60 million, but maybe 60 to 25 million for each asset. But 10,000 units, that's where I want to be at. And I want them to be all kind of in-house deals. Right now, I do a little bit of, kind of co-GP where I'm partnering with other people, but I want to have that in-house at Birch Prosper. On the coaching side, 5,000 successful clients who have raised over $2 million, okay, and actually deployed over $2 million. Right now, my program, that's what I do, is to help people learn to attract capital. So I help them learn to attract all the capital that they need to close deals so that they can make money in real estate. And it requires some of the things that we've talked about today: building your brand, being a servant, speaking to the right people, having clarity and simplicity in your message. So all these things that are very important. But those are my two kind of main goals. So when I come back, I have a little more gray, a little more salt in here, but I'll be there.
I love
You're
it.
gonna have a little bit more green. You're gonna have some salt, but
A
you're
little
gonna
more
have more
green.
green.
That's
now.
right. There we
That's
go.
the most
Yeah,
important thing.
that's right.
A little more green or a little more black ink in that ink.
There we go.
Right? Yeah, absolutely.
That's right.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Brandon, we thank you so much, man. We want you to just stay in the green room, and we're gonna come right back to
Oh, real
you.
quick, man, how do
Yep.
people get in contact with you?
Thank you.
Like email, website, phone number.
Sure. Email is brandon.jenkins@birchprosper. That's BRANDON.JENKINS @birchprosper, BIRCHPROSPER.com. Website is birchprosper.com. I also have a podcast called The Capital Stack. And you'll hear kind of more about this. We're rolling out a little bit of kind of the marketing, but we have an online community for commercial real estate investors that we just recently launched. That's called ProVestor. So you'll kind of hear more or see more about that as well. But
got you,
Man.
That's what's up, man. Brandon, I appreciate the gems.
And as DJ Cali said, and another one.
Man, my brothers, I appreciate it. Appreciate it so much. Yeah, man. For having me on the show. Y'all are incredible, man. I love it.
Appreciate it.
Hey, man.
What's your forte?
Listen, man. My forte now is first of all, after we take Brandon out to lunch and pick his brain a little bit more, let's go raise this moolah.
Yeah, exactly. Let's raise his money. Let's go.
When he says 70 million, he didn't even flinch. That's what I loved. Like,
and I don't think he said like for each property. So that's a quarter.
Ooh, yeah, man.
I think he said 60. He's trying to stay like right below the 60.
It doesn't matter. It was some M's. I don't even care what
quarter.
It was some M's. And here's the thing. So, I talked to you about some changes I've been making in rebranding, and and it's individuals such as Brandon, that I enjoy. First of all, that he's a brother, right? He's a man of faith. And I know we didn't really get to talk much about family and things of that nature, so we got to have a part 2 with him. But just the fact of, to let it be known that, listen, there are individuals, man, that look like me and you that are out here doing amazing things and teaching others how to do so, right? It's no longer, if you want to hide something from a Black person, put it in a book, right? Because we are written epistles, we are written books. We are now not just keeping it within the pages of cover to cover. We're now creating podcasts. We're now creating seminars and workshops and opportunities for this information to get out to the masses. And if you don't get involved and get connected, you can only blame yourself, You can only blame yourself. So make sure y'all subscribe to all of our socials. Make sure you show up to the meetups and show up to the Forte experience and all of these other events that we're going to have, because it's guests like Brandon, it's guests like individuals we have had on the show that is bringing you gems. I mean, bringing you some solid information. And if you don't have your pad and your pen and taking notes when you're watching this, something is wrong. Something is wrong. So,
Yeah.
brother, I know I messed your name up, man.
It's all good.
I'm gonna leave it alone.
I'm gonna set a training up after this, so this way we could talk about how to say my name properly.
Yeah, let's do that, man. After we talk about when we're gonna when I'm gonna book this flight, man, so we can have this lunch. And man, it just it got me excited, man. I do want to say that it got me excited because this week something took place that was a little challenging for me, and I caught myself having a moment of. And it's just me being transparent with everyone, right? I caught myself being down for like an hour. Maybe it was 2. It could have been 2 hours, man. And I, some went crazy with a deal that was supposed to, go through for a client. And I mean, it just went, man, it was a domino effect, right? I was like, all right, man, what's going on here? And I remember the conversation me and you had when you asked me about the question, what should you do, right? And all these things are going through my head, man. And this interview tonight, it really it gave me that boost again to say, you know what you're doing, right? Now go do it. And just make sure you're no longer focusing on, because that was the issue, is that when you focus on your desire to help people, you have to be careful that you're not trying to help people more than they're trying to help themselves. Right? Yeah. And that was the issue of trying to help individuals or get individuals involved, because I think what we have is great, right? But the reality is everybody want a handout and people don't want to, lift your arms up, right? When the war is going. So, man, it's so much I can say, but this was fire. This was
another one.
Yes,
another one, man.
Another one. You know what? I'm gonna put that in our what's the name? I'm gonna make sure I edit that. We're gonna put that in. And another one. Yeah, with his permission, by the way. Maybe he'll be one of our investors when we raise his capital. But one more thing I would say, because you've been getting these mic drops, so I'm gonna get one, because you've been getting these viral clips. So if you are ready to go to the next level, screenshot what you see right now with me and Randall, and I want you to understand that we're partners. You cannot achieve any level of success by yourself. There's power in partnership. There's power in partnership. And maybe you already said this, but I got this clip. This clip is for me. Yeah, bro. But man, this is
I got
dope,
something to follow up, but I'm gonna let that breathe. I'm gonna use it another time.
Listen, y'all. Listen, we are out of here, and make sure y'all go Facebook, IG, and YouTube. Forte community. We got something great going on here. We got something great. Go subscribe right now. Follow. Invite. Make sure you all share every video. Make sure you let your family, your friends, your coworkers, your neighbors, your classmates, your teammates, everyone know that the Forte Podcast is out right now. We appreciate y'all. Also, be sure to visit www.theforteexperience.com www.theforteexperience.com. Go watch our May 4th experience to get an idea of what you can expect coming to Atlanta in November. We love you. We out of here. And another one.